Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Terry Suresh, and I am here today to dispel some myths about hormones and some other really important information about balancing hormones and life changes. I'm really excited that you have joined us today. I am the founder of Hormonal Health and Wellness Centers. We have two locations, one in Southlake, Texas, and one in Rockwall, Texas. And we are really very passionate about changing life and implementing incredible positive life changes with the foundation of hormone restoration and balance. And when we talk about hormone balance, we're not just talking about estrogen. We're talking about all of the hormones that our body makes for men and women: estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, thyroid, vitamin D, and so forth. So you're going to learn a lot today: the differences between the different hormones, the types of hormones that are out there for replacement. When is it a good time to start? What does it mean when you're feeling certain types of symptoms? And of course, the big question that many people ask us is, what about my thyroid? And we are very passionate about addressing thyroid issues way before most practitioners would address them. And that is when your body is showing signs of thyroid deficiency and not when the blood work says you're thyroid deficient. So hang on to your seats. There's going to be a lot of great information and time for questions at the very end. And here we go. So this is one of my favorite slides that I have found, or photos that I've found. I wanted to add it to this webinar. The greatest medicine of all is to teach people how not to need it. You know, that's really what our intention should be as healthcare practitioners, is to get people well and keep you well so you don't become ill or sick or are plagued with disease processes. And the root words of disease is dis-ease. Your body is at dis-ease. And many of the things that I'm going to talk about in this webinar this afternoon are preventative for dis-ease, as you'll see here in just a few moments. So really, we're very passionate in our clinics about helping people reclaim and regain their life and get off as many of those prescription medications as humanly possible. We really believe that prescription medications have a place, but by and large, many things are way overprescribed in this country, and you will see more about that here shortly. So why talk about hormones? Well, natural hormone balance, we call that not alternative medicine, as some people would call bioidentical hormones and natural modalities alternative medicine, but we like to call it an alternative to bad medicine. So let's talk about hormone imbalance. Why is it important? Well, because hormones, when they're out of whack, and this happens for men just as much as it does women, except for women being a little more in tune to their bodies and having a little bit less of a well to dip from in the hormone bank, if you will. We tend to feel it sooner and have a myriad of symptoms that are more profound than men, but men go through it too. And it's really important because when your hormones are out of whack, you can't really be fully present in life. And when we talk about being fully present in life, we're talking about not just your personal life, but your work life as well. It's incredibly important to be productive in every area of your life, and creating wealth in our lives is really the intention of our lives. We're supposed to be wealthy in all aspects. Most people think of wealth, financial wealth is what most people think of when they hear wealth, but we're talking about much deeper than that: emotional wealth, physical wealth, spiritual wealth, I like to say. Because when we're feeling poorly and we're feeling depressed and moody and anxious and we can't sleep and we can't focus and we're not we're fighting with our significant others and our children, we're just moody all the time, we take it out on those that we love the most, our husbands, our wives, our children, our family members, and it really doesn't allow us to feel very connected in our relationships at all. Now, menopause, this webinar is more than just menopause and for women. We are going to talk about men as well, but menopause, it matters. It matters a great deal in this modern age, because 100 years ago, menopause was the end of the lifespan, and 50 years ago, women lived about 20 years after menopause, but now women live 30 plus years beyond menopause. In fact, over half of our life is spent in the postmenopausal state. Now, how do we optimize those latter years after menopause? Well, we do that by balancing hormones. Modern medicine has us living now, our average life expectancy is in the upper 80s. And, do we want to be, it's quality of life issue. Yes, we can be alive when we're in our 60s and 70s and 80s, but what is the quality of life if we're on 20 medications and we're in a wheelchair and we have all osteoporosis and heart disease and diabetes and we're overweight? These are all things that can be prevented and staved off, where you can have a beautifully balanced, active, productive life for men and women after the fifth decade. And that's really important, because our baby boomers and beyond are living into 8 and 9 decades now. It's the same for men. So this is very important. Guys go through this too. All right, so how do you feel? Well, we have patients that come in feeling all over the place. They're angry, they're moody, they're depressed, they're anxious, having panic attacks. I have so many patients that say, I'm having these anxiety attacks. I've never had anxiety before. What is going on? Night sweats, waking up in the middle of the night, hot and sweaty, and then you're hot, you're cold, covers going on and off. It's really miserable, so you don't sleep very well. Hitting a wall in the afternoon, about 2 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon, hitting that wall, men and women alike looking for that energy drink, that Starbucks, something to get them through the rest of the day. It's a hallmark testosterone deficiency. And waking up between 2 and 4 in the morning, that is a hallmark testosterone deficiency for men and women as well. So falling asleep, not always a problem, but it's staying asleep that's a problem that really frustrates people. And sleep is the number one thing we need to restore and revitalize our body. It's very, very important. Fighting with our significant others, weight gain. Oh my gosh, this is just a big one, no pun intended. We have patients come in our clinics every day that say, I just don't understand it. I'm doing everything. I'm eating right. I'm exercising every day, and I just can't budge the weight. Well, that is a very common complaint. And of course, a lot of it is hormone imbalance, but for a lot of women, especially postmenopausal, it's actually thyroid deficiency and type 2 hypothyroidism, which we'll talk about later. And so I'm sure if you're watching this webinar, this is sounding familiar, either for yourself or maybe a loved one or a family member or a coworker, and it is a very significant stage of life. So what's the answer? Well, this is not the answer, but unfortunately, this is the answer that we get when we go to our primary care providers. Typically, we get antidepressants, we get sleeping pills, we get anti-anxiety pills, we get, my new favorite one is adult ADD. Can I get some Concerta or some Vyvanse or some, Adderall because I have adult ADD? Well, these are all, in my opinion, and several practitioners' opinion, very, very overprescribed medications. They're band-aiding symptoms. They're not getting to the root cause of the problem. And we are all about root cause. We want to get to the root cause of what your symptoms are and not just band-aid them. You know, we weren't born with receptors for Prozac and Xanax and sleeping pills. These are not Prozac, Xanax, Ambien, Concerta. We're not deficient in those products in our body. Obviously, this is not the problem. So let's get to the problem and get off of all of these medications that cause more side effects. You know, the number one side effect of the Prozac class of drugs is low sex drive and weight gain. Well, those two the top things that we're trying to fix for you, you know. So the issue there is once you start on your SSRIs, is that family of drugs, you're maybe gaining weight and you don't have a sex drive, but you just don't care because you're emotionally labile. You're not happy, you're not sad, you're just kind of like, whatever. You know, your mood swings may be better, but it's just because you've become a zombie, a robot. We call it the Prozac Nation. Everyone walking around with just no feeling. We're just kind of turning into robots and unhuman, you know. And so and then we can't sleep at night, so we take our Ambien, and then we can't wake up, and then so we have to have some Concerta. It's a vicious cycle, and the list goes on and on. But I can tell you, in our practices, we get patients off of these medications weekly. It is so easy to get off these medications, and the majority of these medications are band-aiding an underlying testosterone deficiency. All right, the pharmaceutical industry does not create cures, they create customers. I could not agree more. Big Pharma is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and I could get on a whole platform and just go on and on about this, but that's not what this webinar is about. But just know that we're not curing diseases with pharmaceutical drugs. We definitely are creating a lot of customers, a lot of dependency. And like I said previously, there are places for medications, obviously, in this country. Medications have saved lives. There's no question about it. But where we're passionate about is in the primary care world. Let's get you well so you don't have to go on these medications is the point of that slide. Again, I love this one. Preventative medicine kills, return business, right? I grabbed this slide from a doctor colleague of mine. I thought it was really cute because preventative medicine, you know, if everybody was healthy, then what are doctors to do? You know, prescribe. We won't have anybody to write prescriptions for, right? I wish that were true in this country. We're a long way from that, but I just thought that was kind of cute. All right, so hormones, let's talk about them. Let's get down to business. Estrogen is what we think of when we hear about hormones, or when we say we're hormonal, or, you know, our family says you need to get your hormones checked. Most women, and by and large, most people think of estrogen. And estrogen is a very important hormone for women. It has over 400 functions in the human body, and it is a woman's most important hormone. However, its primary role is to get the uterus ready for a pregnancy. So after a certain age, we really don't need that much estrogen anymore, but it does have a lot of other important functions in the body, and we do need it all the way until we are not on this earth any longer. So estrogen, very important. But testosterone, I like to say, is the hormone for men and women. It provides major symptom relief. All that depression, anxiety, irritability, mood swings, brain fog, can't sleep, can't focus, afternoon fatigue. All of those symptoms are low sex drive for women, especially erectile dysfunction for men. That's all testosterone driven. So, like I like to say, it protects the bones, the brain, the breast, the heart, the joints, but most importantly, relationships. Because as I said previously, when we're depressed, moody, anxious, irritable, can't sleep, can't focus, all of those things, we really tend to take it out on our significant other. And I have a great story I love to tell about relationships. I have a patient who her daughter and son-in-law had been coming to us for years, and finally she came in with her husband, and her husband is a retired gynecologist. And so they came in and we went through all of her things, and I went through all the program with her, and they decided to move forward with the therapy, which I was very pleased with, considering the husband was a retired gynecologist. I thought maybe he would be more reluctant to go with a natural therapy, but suffice it to say, he was quite desperate to get his wife some help. And she came back in our office about 4 weeks later, because we always check follow-up blood work on our patients. And I saw her in the blood draw chair, and I said, "Oh, how are you? How's it going?" And she just starts crying. And I thought, oh my gosh, this one's not, I didn't get this one right, you know? But when she composed herself, she said, "No, I just have to tell you, I have not liked my husband for 25 years. And she wasn't kidding. You know, I kind of giggled, and she said, "No, I'm really serious. All this time I have not liked him at all. And I realize now it was me and not him." And she was lamenting and mourning the loss of time, because her husband at the time was in his late 80s, and she was in her mid 60s, and she felt like she had lost a great deal of time with him. So she was mourning the loss of time in her relationship. She hadn't been very friendly towards him, apparently, in that time span. About 2 weeks later, I go in to see my next patient, and lo and behold, it's the gynecologist. And he said, "I just want to share something with you. Had I known about this therapy when I was practicing, based on the changes that I've seen in my wife, I would have put every woman on it." And he looked at me and held my hands, and he said, "Thank you for giving me my wife back." And, you know, I really accepted that thanks, and I was very pleased with that compliment. And he said, "And now I need this therapy because I can't keep up with her." And so that family has very, very happy Christmases. Everyone is hormonally balanced. But that is just one of many, many stories of relationship recovery. You know, when women go through these hormone changes, we can't help it. We don't know what's happening in our bodies. You know, it's like aliens have taken over our bodies. And the men that stick by us through these changes, you know, hats off to you guys, because it really can be miserable for everyone involved. Night sweats and hot flashes are nature's way of lowering your heating bills so you can save more money for retirement, right? I don't think so. This lady doesn't look too pleased with that answer. So let's talk about guys for a minute. Now, I love this slide because men are very visual, and so many men, unfortunately, have the misinformation that testosterone has everything to do with sex drive. So a lot of guys are under the impression, if they have sexual desire, that their testosterone levels are just fine. Well, as you can see, libido is the very last thing to go almost on this chart. And the reason I love this chart is because when men get their testosterone levels checked, especially with someone who doesn't really understand how to read the levels, the lab reference range on the right side of the lab slip, it says reference range. Now, the first thing I want to point out, because this is going to come up over and over this afternoon, is that does not say normal range. It says reference or expected range. So the expected range for a man is a testosterone level between 200 and 1100 or 1200 on a lab slip. So if a male gets his testosterone levels done by his regular doctor who doesn't understand optimal levels of testosterone, and he comes back at a 300, he might be told, "Well, your levels are low normal." Well, that is not normal, because as you can see on this chart, for every 100 points a male testosterone level falls below 900, his risk for all cause of death goes up. Alzheimer's disease risk under 840, 860. So important that guys understand this. Men with low testosterone are 3 times more likely to develop Alzheimer's dementia. Aggressive prostate cancer. This misinformation that testosterone stimulates and causes prostate cancer, it blows my mind that that information is even out there, because if that was true, wouldn't you expect more young 18, 20, 25-year-old males to be showing up with prostate cancer when their testosterone levels are peaking? Of course. So that is why this disease primarily hits after 50, because that's it. Most men have been in about a decade of hormone decline by the time they're in their 50s. So aggressive prostate cancer risk goes up under 840. Metabolic syndrome, that's weight gain, high blood pressure, diabetes, type 2 diabetes under 700, coronary artery disease. All of these things, as you can see, are very, very prevalent as your levels fall. So guys, if you're out there listening, or wives or girlfriends, have your husband's numbers tested. It's so important that they get their levels above 900. That is optimal. Now, there's not a lot of good studies on an optimal range for women based on disease processes, but what we do know is women feel the best with a testosterone level above 80. Once a woman's testosterone levels fall below 80, they start having brain symptoms in around the 60s and 70s. When they get below around 50 to 60, they start getting kind of moody and cranky. Sex drive is going, and it just gets worse and worse as the testosterone levels fall. So we really love to keep those levels above 100 in our patients. Some women need to be up at 200 and 300 on their levels, because they have to be what we call run supraphysiologic. That's just what they need to feel the effects, and we'll talk about hormone receptor activity later. All right, so the positive effects of natural testosterone for women and men are everything we talked about reverses. Depression lift, moods, anxiety goes away, and it's one of the first symptoms that comes back in women is anxiety. Joint pain goes away. Sex drive in women is just life-changing for relationships. For sleeping through the night is the number one symptom that is relieved the first week of having your hormones balanced, specifically for testosterone for men and women. So lots of great positive life change when your hormones are balanced. So we get this question all the time about FDA and FDA approval with bioidentical hormones, and I just like to say that every drug that's ever been recalled by the FDA has once been proven to be safe and effective by the FDA. So the FDA is, although it can be a great protector, it's primarily if you can get your drug pushed through, then you can get FDA approval. Now, every bioidentical hormone, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, the ingredients themselves, no matter the modality, is FDA approved. In fact, testosterone, whether it's natural or synthetic, is highly FDA regulated. It's a Schedule 3 controlled substance and Schedule 2 in some states. So it's highly FDA regulated, even bioidentical testosterone. So just to dispel that myth, again, I love this slide. Are they really protecting us? There are annually over 106,000 deaths due to FDA-approved drugs. FDA unapproved supplements, natural modalities, 0, except for Tylenol, which is about 500 deaths per year. All right, this horse is pretty irritated. She's about to get a big old shot of human estrogen, and she's not real happy about it. And we really should be kind of considering the same attitude anytime we're prescribed synthetic progestins, such as Premarin, Prempro, and they come by a myriad of other names these days. But this is where the scales tipped out of women's favor with regards to hormones. In 2002, the Women's Health Initiative trial was halted early due to allegedly overwhelming evidence that hormones caused breast cancer and heart disease and stroke and all of these other awful disease processes. And the message that was sent out by mass media was, stop your hormones, they're bad, they're going to kill you. You know, women were flushing their hormones, doctors quit prescribing hormones to women, and about 2 to 6 weeks later, women were either suicidal or homicidal because we need our hormones. Now, what the message should have been is we need to take a closer look at hormones. We need to look at the route by which we're replacing hormones. We need to look at all the hormones in the body and maybe look at different modalities. That would have been a really good message, because that's actually true. And oral oral synthetic progestins have huge increased risk of breast cancer and Alzheimer's disease and strokes. There's no question that those disease risks are greater with oral because of not only the synthetic nature, because they're derived from the urine of pregnant mares. Premarin is pregnant mare. If you see, that's where that word came from, pregnant mare. And Prempro is Premarin with a conjugated progesterone arm or progestin arm, because we realized in the 50s when women were getting higher risk rates of uterine cancer that women need progesterone to protect the uterus. So at any rate, it was really a bad message. It scared everybody about hormones, which is really, we've spent almost 2 decades now unraveling this terrible information. So this is a great study. It's an analysis of the Women's Health Initiative trial. Now that was redone. The Women's Health Initiative trial was redone, but this is an estrogen alone trial in 2011. And it shows that a minimum of 18,000 and as many as 91,000 excess deaths occurred during the time that women were not being prescribed due to estrogen avoidance. And that's even on the synthetic ones. So even though we do see an increased risk in some diseases, what this study showed is, hey, women were dying of diseases at a much higher rate when we told them not to take hormones than when they were actually taking the hormones. So this is a really important concept to understand, that even though synthetic hormones aren't our favorite, they were definitely doing some good in women during that time. So definitely, really, when you're looking up information on the internet or consulting what I call Dr. Google, make sure you're getting the right information. All right, patches are another form of hormones. Much better alternative, obviously, than oral, because you don't have that metabolism through the liver, therefore you don't have as many side effects. But a couple of problems with patches. Number one, it's the majority of them are only estrogen or estrogen and progesterone combined. Nobody's really paying attention to testosterone, which, as you'll see later, is a powerful protector of the breast and the brain and some other things. And 45% of people don't have the receptors in the skin to absorb and transport hormones very well. And that is one reason, and you get desensitized over time. So it's one reason why they tell you to change places, change spots for your patches. Lots of problems with patches. But again, better alternative than oral, but there are some better alternatives out there. Creams were the mainstay of my practice about 5 years ago, and several problems with creams and patches and oral for that matter. It's a one-size-fits-all approach. Everybody pretty much gets the same dose. There's no dosing science behind the creams or the patches or orals. It's kind of a one-size-fits-all approach. The creams are very messy. They don't absorb well. They can transfer to others, babies and pets, and just lots of problems with creams. Again, biased cream doesn't really have the heart and brain protection as other forms of estradiol and estrogen. And moreover, nobody's really addressing the testosterone piece in women, which is very unfortunate. Now, testosterone for men cream isn't really a great alternative, besides the fact that Testem cream is very smelly and it's very expensive. As you can see by this study, it doesn't get male testosterone levels up very high. On average, only about 100 to 150 points. And as you recall by the slide earlier, men really need to be above 900 to be protected. And this cream has only been shown over the course of a year. These guys were followed to get their levels up to about 450 max. So not great alternative. Injectable testosterone is my least favorite of all the modalities. Women should definitely not be getting synthetic injectable testosterone. The side effects are incredible for women. Please do not ever let anybody put synthetic cypionate in your body. But men, we see male patients in our offices weekly with elevated liver enzymes and other very bad side effects of injectable testosterone: liver problems, increased risk of heart disease, increased risk of prostate cancer. And it is a one-size-fits-all approach. And I get very nervous with all of these cookie cutter injectable testosterone factories that are out there that really aren't balancing men's hormones. They tend to put all males on an oral estrogen blocker. Men need some estrogen. It's very heart protective, but they don't need too much estrogen. So too much estrogen bad, too little estrogen bad. So it's all about balance. So you really want to make sure your loved ones, or you guys out there listening, are getting your hormones balanced appropriately for what's right for you. Hormone pellets are my favorite type of hormone replacement therapy for many reasons. Number one, they are individually dosed. We dose our hormone pellets based on a patient's age, weight, blood levels, activity levels. Then we retest their labs in about 4 to 5 weeks after, and we dose the adjust from there. The dosing is based on 40 plus years of science. The doctor that I trained with in Arizona had been doing pellet therapy for over 30 years, and it's been around since the 30s. It's not new. Was being studied, hormone estrogen and testosterone pellets were being studied in the 30s in women who had radical hysterectomies, meaning they took the ovaries and the uterus, and they noticed huge improvements in all symptoms. Unfortunately for women in this country, Premarin came on market in the late 40s, and so by and large, these modalities being studied kind of fell by the wayside. Premarin was the greatest thing since sliced bread at that time. Women could take a pill and feel amazing, and it really was. It was life-changing for so many women. The other, by and large, in this country, pellet therapy fell by the wayside until about the last 2 decades. It's made a resurgence, but countries like Europe, Australia, primarily have used hormone pellet therapy, and that's where the majority of our medical studies came out of until about 2000. But they have been around for a long time. There's no roller coaster effect. There's a huge roller coaster effect with injectable testosterone. Guys get a shot, they're up for, by day 3 or 4, they feel good. That by day 5, they're kind of coming down, and by day 6, they're feeling really bad and they get really cranky. Obviously creams, having to rub a cream on every day is not the best thing. So pellets, on average, they have a very slow release in the body. They last about 4 months in women, 5 months in men. And so about 2 to 3 times a year for women, 2 times a year for men. You just don't have to think about it. And your body just slowly releases hormone as you need it over time. The dosing for these is highly individualized to each patient, like I said previously. So that's our favorite modality. That's primarily what we prescribe in our practice currently. All right, so this is where I'm going to move into some of the other cofactors that are very important for hormone balancing. And I love this quote by Mark Twain. It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. All right, what is happening on the inside of our body, the intangibles? So, of course, patients all over, women, our biggest fear when we hear about hormones is obviously breast cancer. And that's because of all the bad rap that hormones have gotten with regards to breast cancer. But there is not a single study, and I have looked at studies dating back to the 20s, 30s, and 40s, that shows estrogen causes breast cancer. Actually, it's the lack of the other companion hormones that increases a woman's breast cancer risk. Progesterone and especially testosterone are highly breast protective. There are myriad of studies that show breast protection in women, especially testosterone. Testosterone downregulates or decreases estrogen stimulation of breast tissue, and it pretty much makes sense because a woman starts to lose testosterone in our 30s at about a rate of 50% per year, and sometimes in our 20s. And if a woman is on birth control pills starting in her teens and 20s, birth control pills completely whack testosterone levels. And so when you're testosterone levels are low already starting in your 30s and you get on into your 40s. Now, by the time you hit menopause, you've gone 2 decades with testosterone deficiency. And that's where I like to get patients is in their 30s and 40s when I can still protect the breast, because what happens is breast cancers grow typically very, very slowly. And by the time a breast cancer is detected, it's typically been growing already for 7 to 9 years before it's even seen on a mammogram or felt as a lump. And so that process, as you can see, most women are diagnosed in their early 50s. So as you can see, you've got hormone decline in your 30s, and by the time you're in your 40s, you're losing progesterone and you've already lost testosterone. It's a double whammy to the breast. So really important to understand testosterone's role in breast cancer protection. And it's the unopposed estrogen that increases breast cancer risk, not estrogen in and of itself. Now, what we also see is testosterone to protect breast cancer, protect from breast cancer, even in women on synthetic oral estrogens. That was a great study. The Women's Nurses Health Study, 121,000 women were tested in that study that were already on synthetic oral progestins and had no breast cancer risk when they added natural testosterone. Now, as all things go in all media and Dr. Google goes, we tend to lump all hormones under one hormone umbrella. You have to understand that not all hormones are created equal. Synthetic oral methyl testosterone does not protect women. It has a high rate of conversion in the liver to estrogen, actually has been shown to increase breast cancer risk. So Estratest, Syntest are some oral hormone replacement therapies on market that tout the added benefits of testosterone, which are totally inaccurate because you can't tout the same benefits of natural testosterone via pellets or even creams for that matter as you can oral. It's just not the same. You're not comparing apples to apples. So lots of breast cancer stuff out there. And Dr. Rebecca Glazer, just brilliant woman. I've just had the pleasure of working with. She shared a lot of her medical studies with me. She's very passionate about breast cancer. And she has a great study where she actually implanted a combination of 3 implants of testosterone with an estrogen blocker in and around a 2-centimeter tumor in a breast. And she's done this on more than one occasion. And then 48 days later, they replaced them and put them in some different places. And by day 46, there was a 7-fold reduction in tumor volume. I mean, we're seeing shrinkage of breast cancers in women with testosterone. By week 13, a 12-fold reduction in tumor volume. And a bonus was that blood levels of testosterone were achieved without elevating the estrogen levels. And so women felt good too. This is a huge study. I mean, I am so supportive and backing her. It would be wonderful if this could become a mainstay treatment for breast cancer, but you probably already know the answer why that won't happen. Big pharma, chemotherapy is a multi-billion-dollar industry in this country, so it's going to really be hard to reverse that because, pellets for breast cancer are pretty cheap. Our own studies in my office and Dr. Donovet's office looking at female insertions over the course of 5 years. We've done in our office about 12,000 females. Dr. Donovet's done it over 30,000 females. 3 breast cancers in our practice, no mortality, and 2 of them were on estrogen. Dr. Donovet's had about the same percentage. Now, on average, women to develop breast cancer now is, I think, 1 in 8 or 1 in 9. And Women's Health Initiative trial showed a 26% increased risk of breast cancer in women on orals. As you can see here, 3 out of 12,000 females, those are staggering statistics. And one of these ladies wasn't even on estradiol when she was obviously diagnosed. So really great statistics. We know just based on our numbers that testosterone is very breast protective. Prior to using hormone pellets in his practice, Dr. Donovet's diagnosed on average I believe he said 7 or more breast cancers per year. And as you can see here, he's only had 9 in that time period. So really see great breast cancer protection. The take homes, no increased risk of breast cancer, unlike synthetic oral methyl testosterone, less stimulation of breast tissue, and testosterone estradiol implants do not increase the risk of breast cancer, even in breast cancer survivors. And we have many breast cancer survivors on our therapy. All right, osteoporosis. Basically, all hormones, primarily estrogen and testosterone, very protective to the bones, but testosterone builds bone by over 8% per year. We have study after study after study to show the osteoporosis reversals, osteopenia reversals with testosterone therapy alone. I have countless patients in our practice that have reversed their osteoporosis with hormone pellet therapy. It's been really incredible for prevention there. This is a great study that actually shows the differences in pellets versus orals, patches. And you can see that the change in bone density, especially in the spine, was really impressive with hormone pellet therapy. And people that were on nothing, of course, had a negative change, as you can see. So this is a great visual of bone density increases. All right, Alzheimer's disease, both estrogen and testosterone protect the brain. Women have a higher incidence than men. Women with low estrogen have a great disease risk for Alzheimer's disease. And there's overwhelming evidence that estrogen and testosterone helps decrease cell death in the brain. And this protective effect of both hormones decreases the amyloid deposition, which is what causes Alzheimer's dementia. This is some great information that came from a couple of studies. And men with low testosterone, as I said previously, have a 3-fold increased risk. Men that have their testosterone levels raised above 900 have a 70% reduction in risk. So guys, even if you think you feel great, if you want to protect your brain, I would definitely get those levels up naturally. Alzheimer's disease is going to be just a big burden on this country. It already has. As you can see, it's just lots of trials underway to try and prevent the disease, but we've already got a great way. What if the answer's already here? You know, it's already here. So really get, now I will say I get this question all the time. It does not reverse Alzheimer's disease. It does not reverse disease that is already in process, but it is very preventative for Alzheimer's disease. And this is another great study that talks about prevention and early treatment. This study was 1,800 patients, showed a 30% reduction if hormone therapy in women was started within 5 years of menopause, and especially if used for greater than 10 years. Now, the reason this is so important is because a lot of doctors will tell, you know, the recommendation that's come out from ACOG, American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, is put women on the hormones, the lowest dose for the least amount of time possible. That is just ludicrous. We see study after study after study to show the protective role of hormones in women in all body aspects. And here's a great one from Neurology 2012 that shows you got to be on them longer than 10 years. So brain protection, key. Parkinson's, we're even seeing some wonderful effects with Parkinson's symptoms. Testosterone beautifully improves non-motor Parkinson's symptoms. As you can see, it's a great study based on the Parkinson's questionnaire, and that's really exciting. Something really exciting we're seeing in the hormone world. So the heart and cholesterol. So lots of really cool information coming out and it's been coming out for several years, how protective testosterone is to the heart. One study showed men over 50 who had their testosterone levels in the upper limits of the expected range had a 50% reduction in coronary artery disease risk and reversals in coronary artery disease and other studies. As you may know and you may not know, heart disease is a disease of inflammation. It's not a disease of too much Kentucky Fried Chicken, although that certainly can't help the matter. We've got all this focus on cholesterol, cholesterol, cholesterol. It's crazy, all this focus on cholesterol. There is no data to support cholesterol, high cholesterol increases heart disease risk. It's crazy. Cholesterol is the building block of everything in our body, especially hormones. So we're putting on these people on all these medications that lower cholesterol when they have no other disease risk factors. I totally agree with the medications. If you have a smoker that's a diabetic, that's morbidly obese, okay, yeah, they might need a little extra help. But I had a patient come in just the other day. She's young, she's early 50s, she's healthy, she's not a smoker, she's not overweight, she eats right, she exercises, her cholesterol was a little high, and her doctor put her on a statin. It's insane. These statins just whack your liver, whack your muscle. Muscle breaks down muscle and can cause a very serious reaction called rhabdo. We call it rhabdo. It's a hospital emergency. It's just, I could go on and on. I'm very passionate about it, obviously, but let's really pay attention to prevention, and hormone balance is a huge preventer. Some great studies here, several studies, in fact. Testosterone has anti-anginal effects in humans, which is vasospasm and coronary artery vasodilation. It opens up the vessels in the heart. High serum testosterone has reduced risk of cardiovascular events, reduces insulin resistance, reduces cholesterol, reduces visceral fat. I mean, just the studies just could go on and on and on. And I can only, obviously have time to put a few up here, but just suffice it to say, the data is out there. So if your practitioner says, oh, there's no studies to support hormones or hormone pellets, send them my way. I've got thousands to share. This is another great visual of a study. Low testosterone plus high estrogen increases heart attack risk. And a lot of guys have low testosterone and high estrogen. Not a great combination at all. 1 in 7 premenopausal women will die of heart disease, and postmenopausal it rises to 1 in 3. It's really sad that women aren't really being paid attention to in the heart disease world. But it's the leading cause of death of American women. Kills a third of us. More than 200,000 women die each year from heart attacks, 5 times as many as breast cancer. But we're on this breast cancer rant, breast cancer awareness month. And heart disease kills way more women than breast cancer does. So let's pay attention to heart disease in women. Moreover, women don't present with heart attacks like men do. In fact, most women present to the emergency room with a heart attack actually already dead, because they don't have the crushing chest pain and the shortness of breath. Typically, they might have vague symptoms like a little bit of nausea, a little bit of neck pain, but very vague, and women tend to kind of blow those symptoms off, right? So really need a lot of heart disease awareness for women. 35% of deaths in American women they're caused by cardiovascular disease each year. I'm sorry, I kind of had a little blurb there. And almost 160,000 women each year die from congestive heart failure. So a lot of evidence out there for heart disease, and so much evidence to support hormone balance for heart protection. Joint pain, it's probably one of the top symptoms that is relieved for patients once they get their hormones balanced with our pellet therapy. And it's one of the top things that comes back in our patients. Lots of really cool data out there. There is some great data to support hormone therapy to have a 40% reduction in total knee and total hip replacement. So we know testosterone is very powerful to help rebuild bone and decrease inflammation. This was a great study that we found out there. There's many, many, many other studies with regards to arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis. Now some exciting things coming out regarding testosterone and RA, even though it's an autoimmune disorder, and osteoarthritis. Some exciting stuff came out starting in 2010 that showed hormones, estrogen, testosterone actually to increase cartilage formation in the joints. So lots of stuff out there on arthritis. All right. The doctor of the future will no longer treat the human frame with drugs, but cure and prevent disease with nutrition. But if that were true, Thomas Edison is probably rolling in his grave to see how we eat and what we're done to our food in this country. But for hormone balance to be optimal, we have to treat some certain key vitamin and mineral deficiencies and optimize our thyroid. These vitamins and minerals play a key role in how well our receptors take the hormone and put it in the cell. So when we have patients come to our offices, you are going to leave with some supplement. It's not because we're just trying to sell them to you. It's because there is a direct correlation between certain deficiencies and how well hormones work in your body. And that's what I'm going to touch on a little bit here. I love this slide. It's so true, and you can read it yourself, but it's quite funny. So vitamin D, the other powerful hormone. Most people are pretty aware of vitamin D now. When I first started replacing it, it was almost unheard of. But one thing the take home for vitamin D is that levels under 60 showed a 5-fold increased cancer risk and 160% increased risk of heart disease. It's a very important hormone for breast cancer, all cancers really, but cancer and vitamin D, huge link between the two, and heart disease as well. When vitamin D levels fall below 20, heart disease risk increases 5-fold and cancer risk increases 4-fold. So really important to get those vitamin D levels checked. Darker skin ethnicities do not synthesize vitamin D from the sun. And when we lather on sunscreen on our kids and shield ourselves from the sun, we're also blocking vitamin D synthesis from the sun. So really important to get that vitamin D orally. But most importantly, you want vitamins A, D, and K together. And that is the way you will get your bones built. You can't just take vitamin D and you can't just take calcium or calcium and D. You will not build bone. Bone is made up of 19 minerals. It's very important to have all of the minerals. We are multi-mineral deficient in this country. We're not at all calcium deficient. In fact, we're calcium overloaded in this country, in fact. And a lot of that is because of all this vitamin D use, and nobody's looking at vitamin K2. You've got to have K2 to drive it into the bones. And this is a great visual. These are the Vero brothers. And as you can see, they all need each other very, very badly to hold themselves up. So if you can imagine, A and D are the ones on the bottom. D3 smiling at the camera. We know D3's role very well. A has got his head between the legs. We're not really quite sure what his role is. And K2 is the brother on top. And without D and A, he would fall flat on his face. And so really understanding that there's an integral relationship between these three. K2 and K, let me just make a clarification. Vitamin K1 is what is found in green leafy vegetables that has to do with clotting factors. And if you're on a blood thinner, you're supposed to avoid spinach and all these things with K1. K2 is a completely different K that's actually made from the bacteria that line your gut. So probiotics, which is a whole nother talk I'll have, are so important. But K2 is vital to shuttle calcium from the soft tissue and the bloodstream into the bones and teeth where it belongs. In fact, there are studies that show that K2 to decalcify calcifications in the heart and in the carotids. It's really exciting what K2 can do in your body. It's very hard to find. It's if you eat a lot of fermented foods, like in some Asian diets, like kimchi, lots of K2 in there. But unfortunately, the American diet doesn't really have a lot of K2. So you have to get it orally, and we have a proprietary blend of vitamins A, D, and K that you can get at our offices. It's very important. Thyroid, so important to understand. If you've consulted Dr. Google and Dr. Google says your weight gain and your cold hands and your cold feet and your extreme fatigue are thyroid related, but you went to your regular doctor and they said, nope, your thyroid is normal because they're looking at the piece of paper and not you, you were probably right. Cold hands and cold feet are thyroid deficiency until proven otherwise. I mean, that is the #1 symptom. Hair thinning, brittle nails, outer eyebrow thinning, puffy eyes, puffy lips, all of these things. It's called type 2 hypothyroidism, and that's where your thyroid is producing normal amounts of thyroid, but the cells aren't taking it up. And this has been around since the 30s, and we called it incipient hypothyroidism. Very important to discover. I love this slide. This doctor is freaking out about the cholesterol level on the screen of his computer. And the wife or whoever that is says, you might want to actually take a look at the patient. This is so telling. This is what I hear weekly, almost daily in our practice. I go over, and my practitioners go over labs in great detail, and labs are a very valuable tool, but nothing replaces astute observation of your patients and listening to their medical history and taking reflexes, taking temperatures, shaking a hand. I can tell if somebody's thyroid is low just by shaking their hand. It's ice cold, right? If you're one of those that freezing cold, you got to wear socks to bed every night. I've had so many patients say, I haven't had to wear socks to bed for the first time in 25 years. So we are very aggressive with thyroid, replacing thyroid in our offices. Again, astute history. I call it the lost art of medicine. Depression, anxiety, fatigue, heart arrhythmias. These are all thyroid deficiency symptoms. And Prozac, of course, is not the answer. I love that. Iodine, important mineral. Breast cancer and iodine deficiency are highly, highly linked. Thyroid cancer and iodine deficiency, highly, highly linked. We are very, very iodine depleted in this country, much like we're, D depleted, and primarily iodine because it's a key mineral, and our soil is so demineralized. All of the GMO, I could get on a whole rant about that, but I won't. But just suffice it to say, we need it. It's a potent antioxidant, and it is vital for your hormone receptors to work, as is thyroid, vital for your hormone receptors to work. I have lots of stories about iodine, but this one really stands out in my mind because, we get people's hormones balanced all the time, and of course, a lot of people, they feel good and they start noticing how poorly their kids are feeling and acting. And this lady said, I think I want to get my son tested for his testosterone levels. And, I said, okay, that's fine. I doubt he's got low testosterone, but, this day and age, I'm seeing a lot more young guys with it just because of our diet and how our DNA is changing. Lots of hormones in the diet, in plastics and foods and things. But anyway, we got his blood work done. His testosterone was great. It was above 900. It was perfect, actually. But his vitamin D and his iodine were super low. This kid was on ADD meds, the whole gamut. And so I just replaced his iodine and his vitamin D. And 2 months later, I saw the mom, and she came in to get another hormone pellet therapy and treatment, and she was picking up more vitamins for her son, who now was off all of his meds, making straight A's at A&M in college, and she was picking up vitamins to ship to him. She said, I couldn't get this kid to take a Flintstone vitamin, but you changed his life. I mean, he can focus, he's sleeping, he has energy, he has interest in girls, he has a girlfriend now. So what was happening with this guy is he had plenty of gas in the tank. He just didn't have, the pistons weren't firing to get the fuel into where it needed to go to get his engine running, right? And so it was a beautiful example of how these key vitamins and these key minerals, and I'm just talking about 2 of them. There's a lot more out there. Probiotics are huge for ADD, and the stomach is the second brain. That's be a whole nother webinar that I do another time. But just suffice it to say, really important for all ages to have these supplements so their hormones work. So key take homes on this, a lot of information. It's been a long webinar. Hormone imbalance can occur in men and women at any age. Not all therapies are created equal, and it's not a one-size-fits-all approach. You've got to find somebody that understands hormone balance. Get tested. Low normal NAT labs are not optimal in most cases, and this is where I will take questions. Our patients and people want to live. We want to live like this guy, shooting hoops, feeling good. He's clearly in his 60s at least, and not like this version of this guy, Got a lot of pills to take from, feeling tired, feeling puny, just not fun. So this is how we want to live, and this is how we want to spend the last decades of our life there on the left-hand side of the screen. Balanced people, energy levels, restored interest in life. A lot of guys say my get up and go is got up and went. The things I loved, I just don't like doing anymore. That reverses. Sex drive, especially in women, moods, anxiety, depression, all of these things, ability to focus, weight loss, body fat decrease. All of these things increase abundance and wealth in all aspects of your life. It's so important. We're so passionate about it. And I hope you've enjoyed this webinar, and I hope that you will come and see us If you're interested in our therapy, these are our 2 office numbers. That's our website. You can always email us questions. Thank you so much for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you in our clinics. I'm going to take a couple of questions now. One question, this question always comes up: how much does it cost? Well, hormone pellet therapy for women is the therapy itself is about $330. For men is anywhere between $600 and $700, depending on how low they are and how much hormone they need. Consultations are $125. Um, we give detailed paperwork to file for insurance reimbursement. More and more companies are reimbursing for the pellet therapy. We take insurance for the lab work. We do lab work here in the office, or we send you to any of one of our affiliate labs all over the Metroplex. And insurance is reimbursing higher for males than females, but it definitely is reimbursing. So I like to say it's about 2 to 3 times a year for women, twice a year for men. It averages about 80 cents a day if you average it out, maybe $1 to $2 a day if you're a guy. That's a lot less than most of us spend on Starbucks coffee and supplements and energy this and energy that and sex drive this and hair growth that and weight loss pills and all of these things. If you add it all up, it's a much more economical therapy. Side effects, that's a good question. Side effects in men, almost non-existent. Guys just kind of don't really have the side effects. One of the main side effects that we deal with, and it's really only in less than 7% of our guys, is a little bit of estrogen conversion. Some guys have higher levels of something called aromatase, which increases estrogen levels, and we will either put you on if it's a mild increase, we'll put you on a really important supplement to naturally block estrogen. If it's elevated too much, then we'll put you on a prescription estrogen blocker for a short period of time. Usually it's just transient while your body adjusts to the hormones, because again, we don't want to overblock your estrogen. Estrogen has protective effects as well. For women, the primary side effects and nuisance side effect for women is increased hair growth. Our hair grows faster all over our body, on our head. Dark skin ethnicities, dark skin Caucasian women already deal with facial hair growth. It grows faster. There's just nothing we can do about that. It's a small price to pay for the symptom relief, I'll tell you. But other than that, some women may have bleeding concerns if they're on estrogen therapy and they're not compliant with their progesterone. Progesterone protects the uterus from endometrial cancer and from bleeding. So that's a much less common side effect that women deal with. But by and large, there's really just not any. They're dose dependent typically. If there are side effects, they can be easily managed with just simply adjusting the doses. Other than that looks like about all that's rolling up. I hope this was informative and a good information session for you. And look for future webinars coming out on some other things that we're very passionate about, probiotics and some other things, omegas and our healthy transformation programs and so forth. So I appreciate you all. In good health, and good night.